Last time, 3.5 months ago, we left off by the thing of Lechem Mishnah. Okay, on Shabbos you need Lechem Mishnah because the month fell twice on Friday for Shabbos, and therefore the Chum instituted that every meal that you eat on Shabbos, Friday night, Shabbos day, Shalosh, anytime you eat 10 meals a day, you wash 10 times a day on Shabbos, you still need to have Lechem Mishnah by each of the meal. Now, even if it's a little bit cracked, it's still considered a whole. What happens, these are where we're up to now. What happens if somebody doesn't have 2 whole challahs? So then they say if you can cut it in half, you can sometimes stick them together with a toothpick, or something like that, to hold it together, that it should look like one. But there's a famous story with the Friedrich Rebbe. Chassid once came to the Friedrich Rebbe. By Fabrengen, the Friedrich Rebbe asked if he made Kiddush. He said no. He gave him his becher to make Kiddush, and then he wanted to give him Lechem Mishnah. So there were no complete challahs left on the table. So the Friedrich Rebbe said in Yiddish, there's nothing as complete. In Yiddish there's an expression, there's nothing as complete as a broken one. So he gave him 2 broken half challahs, so to speak, and the person had Lechem Mishnah that way.
So we should put a toothpick in, or?
No, if you have just put the 2 pieces together and...
2 pieces together to make a whole piece?
No, I'm saying, what happens if you have only 2 little pieces left? Or 2 half of challahs?
Okay, but what if you have like 2 slices of bread?
Then you take the 2 and you make Lechem Mishnah. If there's no choice, that's what you do.
And how come on Pesach we're so careful that it shouldn't have a crack, but...
Not a crack, that it shouldn't be broken.
But it's not the same idea?
It is the same. Except by matzah is just more prone to be broken.
So...
Now, what?
So matzah, if it was a little crack, could also be used?
According to many opinions, it could be used. Yes. Now, there are opinions in halacha, it's interesting. Sometimes you have these really small little chalalach, the real small ones, that are not even a kazayas. So according to many opinions, if it's not a kazayas, you can't use it for Lechem Mishnah. It has to be at least 1 ounce. A lot of times the real small ones, sometimes it's questionable if they're actually kazayas or not. So it still needs to be preferably at least a kazayas. Okay? Unless if somebody has no other challah, so then they could use less than a kazayas. Even if you have, let's say, a frozen challah, let's say you have 1 challah you're going to be using, and then there's a challah and a frozen challah. You don't have to thaw it out. You can use it as the second challah. Obviously, you're not going to eat it. As the second challah, you could use the challah that was frozen. Even though it's frozen, you could use it for Lechem Mishnah. It's not a problem.
Is there an Indian, someone said that when you make Lechem Mishnah, the 2 challahs should be the same size and look alike? Is there an Indian in it?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Should call it to make different sizes? Is that a question?
Yeah, question, do they have to be the same size and look the same and be the same?
No.
No? Okay, now, when a person but we said, every meal that you have on Shabbos, if you're washing 5 times, you have to have 5 times Lechem Mishnah. Now, one person, by having the 2 challahs together, can fulfill everybody's obligation of Lechem Mishnah. In other words, like this, women have an obligation of 2 challahs, kids over the age of chinuch have an obligation to have 2 challahs. Everybody has an equal obligation to have 2 challahs. But if the head of the household, let's say, or man, whatever it is making Hamotzi on 2 challahs, as long as you hear the bracha, Hamotzi, that they made, you fulfilled your obligation of Lechem Mishnah, even if you're not washing right away. Give you a practical example. Somebody makes Kiddush, and then the husband, let's say, goes washes for bread, and then something happens, you have to take care of the baby. So the woman is not ready to wash yet, or for whatever. So she's not ready to wash yet. So the din is, as long as she hears his Hamotzi, she fulfills her obligation of Lechem Mishnah, even though she didn't do it when he did it. So she listens to his bracha v'ameitzi, she gets the fulfillment of Lechem Mishnah, and then when she when she washes, she takes a piece of challah, makes a meitzi, and do it. Now, another thing is brought down though, the challah should be unwrapped. You shouldn't have, you take out the frozen challah from the freezer, it's wrapped in the plastic. Paskim right, you should really unwrap it. Take it out of the wrapper, even though it's frozen, but you should take it out of the wrapper. Enter at your own risk.
You made it.
Okay, now, by Shabbos, if this... The smaller one. If this is a challah, okay, the custom is, that people make a mark on the challah, as if to show where they're cutting it. So the custom is you make a mark on the challah as if to show where you're cutting it. And then you make the bracha meitzi. I don't know if we discussed this a while ago, but because during the week, before sliced bread, people didn't have sliced bread, right? They had a challah and they cut it. So the din was, you're supposed to make a bracha, preferable to make a bracha on something whole and complete. So, but at the other end, the other side of the coin, you don't want to make a separation between the bracha and the eating. So what they used to do in the olden days, pre-sliced bread, when they had a challah roll, or whatever, they would start the bracha when it was whole. They would say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hameitzi lechem min haaretz. They would be cutting it while they're making the bracha. And then when they finish the bracha, they break off a piece. That's where the expression comes, breaking bread. In halacha it's called bitzias hapas, because really according to halacha you're supposed to break off the piece at the end. Today people break off the slice they get, they break off. But there is a concept in the Gemara of bitzias hapas, actually meaning breaking bread. So, but Shabbos you can't do that, because Shabbos you need it to be complete. So we make a mark as if to show this is where I'm going to cut. It's not going to take too much time. I make the bracha meitzi, and then I begin cutting down. After I make the bracha meitzi, then I cut down the challah and then give it to everybody.
What if you can't find that mark?
Then you make a new one.
And so something.
No, what's interesting though,
What happens?
What is it? I don't understand. What is the mark doing?
the mark is just to show that this is where we're going to be cutting it. There shouldn't be a bigger delay between the bracha and the slicing and the eating.
And how about that little piece that people, I think you went over this before. There's a little piece they cut off at the end.
Because it says if you eat the end of a loaf of bread or challah, it makes you forget your learning. So they cut off a small piece at the end, just that you're not eating the end. Then they cut a slice. Now, which is also not according to the laws of etiquette. Let's say there's 5-10 people at the table, right? And one person is making a meitzi. So they make a meitzi and he's cutting the challah. Now, according to etiquette, you should cut 5 slices of challah, give them out to everybody, and then you should take your bite. But that's not what halacha says. In this case, if you're cutting the challah, you cut your piece of challah, you right away dip it into salt and eat it, and then you continue slicing. Why? Because you made a bracha. There shouldn't be a separation between your bracha and your eating.
And also there's something that when you hand it to the person,
They don't hand it in their hands.
They're supposed to take that and eat it first and then hand. Is there something about, somebody told me no.
No, just the guy that made the bracha is supposed to eat it right away.
Maybe it had to do with the Kiddush then. I mean, when
Time out,
somebody,
you don't hand it to the person, you put it on the table?
well, like what I'm saying
put
is
it on the
somebody
table.
told me that I had to eat it.
Kiddush also?
No, just bread.
How much time do you have
So-
to eat it?
How much time do you have to eat a kazayas? You don't need to eat the kazayas right away, but you eventually need to eat 1 ounce of challah within 7 minutes. Huh?
7 minutes. Within the 7 minutes that you received it?
No. You have to eat a kazayas within 7 minutes. Because then you're able to make an after bracha.
Cut it both ends? Or just one end?
You cut one end. You cut one end, and then everybody gets, and then everybody eats. Okay, people need to, what?
They have halachos now with apples in them, and chocolate,
No.
herbs, and olives. Is that all good?
Halachically, it's good. If there's too much chocolate, it's better not, but halachically, it's good anyway. Remember we learned a while back when we were learning Birchas Hanenin, we learned that flour and juice is mezainis, right? Unless we eat a lot of it, then it becomes Hamotzi, right? So what happens if somebody doesn't have any challah? No challah at all. They could take 2 danishes and make Hamotzi on the danish. And then the question, how much do they have to eat? There are different opinions. But because it's the meal of Shabbos, right? Because it's a meal of Shabbos, so then it becomes a prominent food. Like if you eat a lot of cake, you make Hamotzi. So therefore Shabbos meal does it also.
So when you have like Kiddush and Shul with mazonos, that's not considered your meal, right? Your meal's when you go home and make motzi, right?
Well, to answer like a typical Jew, yes and no. There's 2 issues. Kiddush has to be in the place of the meal, right? And then you have to have a meal on Shabbos. Washing, correct? Now, how much challah or cake do you need for Kiddush? It's a kazayas, which is 1 ounce. For Suda Shabbos, Alter Rebbe says you need to have a kibetza, which is 2 ounces. And generally speaking, we learned already that when you wash for bread, in order to make the bracha on the Netilas Yadayim, you need to eat 2 ounces of bread. 1 ounce of bread, you don't make a bracha on the Netilas Yadayim, correct? Then there's a din of Suda Shabbos. Okay? You have to have a meal on Shabbos. Many people, if you're not in shul, you're at home, you make Kiddush, and then you eat your meal, so you have both things together, correct? Is somebody Yaitse Su'ud Shabbos? Is somebody fulfilled their obligation of the meal of Shabbos just with cake? Or must you wash on Shabbos? So Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe writes, you need to wash for Hamotzi, to be fulfilling the obligation of the meal of Shabbos. In Shulchan Aruch, there's a comment from the Alter Rebbe's brother. This is not in Hilchos Shabbos. This is in Kupei Ches, in the laws of Birchas Hanenin. The Rabbi Maril, the Alter Rebbe's brother, Rabbi Yehuda Leib, writes that I heard from my brother at the end of his life, he changed his mind, and he said you could be Yaitzes Suda Shabbos even with Mezainis. There's a Tshuva in Samach Tzedek that says a little bit differently, but whatever. But the bottom line, in Chabad, we know factually, when there were the winter Shabbosim, the short Shabbosim with the Fabrengens, the Rebbe would Fabrengen till after Shkia, and then the Rebbe would have Mincha and Ma'ariv, and then everybody went home to eat Suda Shabbos, including the Rebbe who did not eat the meal before the Fabrengen. They say that the Rebbe was not makpid to wash for bread for Suda Shabbos. He was very makpid to wash from Alav Malka, Saturday night. That the Rebbe...
Doesn't it say halachically you're supposed to wash 3 times on Shabbos?
In many opinions it says, but concerning the 3rd meal on Shabbos, you could be lenient with cake, according to many opinions, fruit. The Rebbe writes, we're not makpid in washing for Shalosh Shudas. Okay, let me explain like this. Why do we have 3 meals on Shabbos? Halachically, during the week, a person has 2 meals. Breakfast and dinner. That's what halacha says. For instance, if a poor person comes into the city, the community has to give him 2 meals a day for the 6 days. Shabbos, they have to give him 3 meals. Now, where do we learn out this thing that you need to have 3 meals on Shabbos? Why is it, why can't you have just breakfast and dinner? So it says like this: when Moshe Rabbeinu was speaking about the man, Moshe Rabbeinu said like this: Ichluhu hayom, eat the man today, ki Shabbos hayom l'Hashem, because today is Shabbos for Hashem. Hayom lo yisimtzeu basada. You're not going to find the man in the fields today. The man fell double Friday. Shabbos it didn't fall. The man did not fall on Shabbos, right? But in this pasuk about the man, which is why we have Lechem Mishnah and all that, right? The pasuk says 3 times the word hayom. It said, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Ichluhu hayom, eat it today. Ki Shabbos hayom l'Hashem, because Shabbos, today is Shabbos to Hashem. Hayom today, lo yisimtzeu basada. You're not going to find it in the field. But by the 3rd hayom, it says hayom loy, that you won't have hayom. So from there, the Rabbi brings us down to hayom yom, by the way. So the first 2 hayoms means you have to have a full meal. Hayom, the 3rd one, is not a full meal. Hayom loy, it doesn't have to be, but you have to eat something.
So where's the second meal?
For instance,
if you're not washing and
so the question is, can I fulfill my obligation of the meal with cake? Shabbos day.
Second one is lunch. Friday night.
But he said
Now, halachically, you're supposed to have 1 meal Friday night and 2 meals on Shabbos. What happens if, for whatever reason it is, somebody was not able to eat a Friday night meal? Right? In the hospital having a baby. Whatever. They weren't able to have a meal. So Shulchan Aruch says you have to have 3 meals Shabbos day. You don't make Kiddush 3 times. You make Kiddush, you have to make the Friday night Kiddush Shabbos day, and then, so you have the concept of 3 meals, but I'll give you a simple example. If somebody, let's say Friday night, eat a meal, right? Shabbos morning they get up and they have coffee and cake. Well, that covers 1 meal. Then you have 2 meals, Friday night, and then the main meal, Shabbos lunch, you wash, and then you have the meal. So the second meal is really shalosh udas, where you could be yaitze with that anyway. But the Rebbe writes that even though you don't have to eat bread, but you have to eat something. You need to eat something for the meal. Okay.
So you cannot it's not enough to drink an extra cup of wine.
That's good for Kiddush Makom Suda.
But you still need to wash.
Or Mezainis at least.
You're not yotze with 6 ounces of wine a day?
The Yaitze Kiddush, like we said, there's a few dinim here. One law is you have to make Kiddush, and the Kiddush needs to be in the place of a meal. Okay? Now, for Kiddush, what is a meal? Either an ounce of bread or cake, or another 3 ounces of wine, in addition to Kiddush. Just tell you, Kiddush needs, in order to be Yetze Kiddush, you need to have either another 3 ounces of wine or grape juice, or you need to eat 1 ounce of bread. Like for instance, this happens a lot and people are not correct doing this. They go to shul for the Kiddush, they hear Kiddush, women especially, they don't eat cake, okay? And they have a bowl of cholent. And then they go home and they wash for the meal. Correct? The problem is they have to make Kiddush again. They did not fulfill their obligation of Kiddush because they didn't eat 1 ounce of cake or bread or another 3 ounces of wine. So they would have to eat it and make Kiddush again. They did not fulfill their obligation of Kiddush.
Another 3 ounces of wine. You can have 3 ounces of wine and then you have another 3 ounces?
Besides the Kiddush wine, you need another 3 ounces of wine. Whatever.
So if you're home and you hear Kiddush and you take another cup of wine and you don't wash and you have a seuda,
Yeah.
it's not good enough?
Well, you need mezainis.
Need something. So if you have mezainis, you might as well have away.
Right, well, whatever. But first, the rice cakes are not going to be good for, according to us. For the non-Lubavitchers who make mezainis on rice, and therefore they make mezainis on rice cakes, for them, rice cakes is mezainis, so that's Mokum Suda. But we, the Alter Rebbe says, you don't make a mezainis on rice, you make sha'akos, so it's like any other thing.
So that like, according to the Chabad way, where we can have like milk and cake in the morning, and technically, for a person, let's say, who's not listening to Kiddush, they could sit and have cholent, and then go home and have to make Kiddush.
No, after davening, you can't eat before Kiddush. Once somebody, man or woman, davens shachris,
Right.
once they daven the morning davening, and they say the Shemona Esrei, they cannot eat or drink until they make Kiddush. They're not allowed to eat or drink until they make Kiddush. When you see, I'm not even talking about these Kiddush clubs, you see people in the show drinking water or soda, whatever. I mean, water technically you can drink before Kiddush, but it becomes questionable. If you you can't drink before Kiddush. We're strict not even to drink water before Kiddush. So once you finish Shemona Esrei of Shachris, yeah, you cannot eat or drink anything until you make Kiddush. What? It's preferable to be, but it doesn't have to be. No, it's nothing to do with taking out the Torah. Once you daven Shachris, you have an obligation. That's the way we hold. Once you daven Shachris, you have an obligation to make Kiddush. And until you make Kiddush, you're not allowed to eat. Now, when you make Kiddush, you need to make sure the Kiddush is in the place of a meal, which is 1 ounce of cake or bread, or another 3 ounces of wine. Yeah, I mean, not rice crackers, but the regular, yeah. But you have to eat enough of them. 1 ounce. I mean, pretzels are also
we
good.
weighed them. There was 19 crackers. Of these, of her
When?
Of her stuffed crackers.
Before davening.
Ask
Yeah.
Lucas.
9 crackers.
No, 19. There was 19 of her crackers, little crackers. That's a lot. Or
Right?
18.
And
Yeah.
then they'll wash after, right?
What, you mean right away?
Not right away.
A few hours later?
This is a lot when you think of a cracker.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yudas, how many crackers did we have to eat to make the desire? Do you remember?
It depends what type of crackers
No,
there's.
I mean, I'm talking about her stout crackers.
No, not still. It's 18.
Yeah. How many?
18.
You're not talking about the pretzels, you're talking about the crackers.
Crackers is 8, 9.
What?
You got 8, 9 crackers.
But you're talking about pretzels.
The pretzels,
No.
Yeah, the ones that you always get.
yeah, 18.
Are they little?
They didn't seem so little.
There's like this.
It's a lot.
The scale was
It's
off.
half the box.
No, you just go by how much the weight of the box is, how many
Right.
things are in the box.
Or
and
you
you
weigh
figure
it. You just weigh it. You put it on a scale. And see.
Okay, next. Now, okay, Friday, now let's discuss the 3 meals of Shabbos. Oh, it's later already. Okay, just one last thing. You have 3 meals of Shabbos. The Friday night meal, we said, has to be eaten Friday night. What's the earliest you can start the Friday night meal? 1 hour and a quarter was called Plaga Mincha, like we learned, 1 hour and a quarter of halachic hours before sundown. How late can you eat the Friday night meal? All the way to dawn, which is 72 minutes before sunrise. See, basically a whole night, if somebody went to sleep and 3 o'clock in the morning they wake up and they didn't have Friday night meal, so they have to make Kiddush and eat the Friday night meal. If they didn't eat a Friday night meal, so then you have to eat 3 meals during Shabbos day. That's what Shulchan Aruch says.
What if they ate yashma? Can they still eat?
They said a apple, you mean?
Yeah.
If they said a apple and they slept,
Uh-huh.
then they can eat when they get up. Why not? They slept already.
Oh,
They said a apple and they slept. So a apple was covered by the sleep that you did.
but if they didn't, but they said it and they didn't fall.
Okay, then, let's go to Tanya.